Before we begin, I would like to apologize that this tier list video has taken so long. The first rendered video was about 3 hours plus long, as it was very intricate about the details of each frames. I decided to postpone it and make it brief and concise. So this is the final version of the community tier list. I hope you enjoy it, and may you find the information I've provided on each frames useful in some way. A quick detail about the tier list before we start. Top tier is those frames that possess godly powers that make them unique and powerful among the rest. Strong picks are those frames that can do multiple tasks, while average picks are those frames that specialize in a specific mission. And top trash is those frames that the community thinks need rework. Lastly, if you want to see the result of the community tier list poll, then check it later at the end of the video. Okay, let's begin. Ash. This frame is in between average pick and strong pick, with most of the respondents saying that he is an average frame. The reason behind this is because Ash becomes a strong pick because of his armor stripping capability. He becomes universally good when you add the Seeking Shuriken augment on his first ability. Aside from that, this frame can also do one-shot kill with his fatal teleport augment, and this is pretty handy in mission types like Sedna Arena, or credit farming the index. He is also treated well when it comes to survivability because he can turn invisible, which also gives you more damage through stealth multiplier if you decided to have a silent weapon. Lastly, he can obliterate a crowd with his fourth ability's true damage. All you need is power, strength and duration for your combo counter, and you'll be seeing 13k or more bleed ticks on the enemies with his Blade Storm ability. If we sum it all up, then we could say that this frame's ability is great because they all serve a purpose, and Ash should be considered as a top tier frame. While I agree with that statement, you can't also deny the fact that not all players want to play stealthy in the game. Also, Ash abilities are made for killing enemies, and some may consider using other frames for defense missions, which obviously will be more efficient than this frame. Atlas. This is obviously an average pick frame, since I can't see having fun with Atlas outside long survival runs, or in the Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. Don't get me wrong, you can take Atlas on whatever mission you want, but if you really want to have some dumb fun with this frame, then best that you dive in missions that there are lots of enemies. The thing about Atlas is that his kit is built towards enduring and punishing enemies. His landslide ability can give one heck of a punch if you mod it well, or have a god roll Riven on your stat stick, while his other abilities are for survivability. His Tectonic for blocking damage, Petrify for crowd control, and can also be used as a damage boost for landslide, and his Rumblers are for aggro. Plus, his rubble mechanics will only be great if you can kill enemies constantly. With this all in mind, we can conclude that Atlas is perfect for those missions that have a lot of enemies, and the best advice I could give to you right now is to try him on the Steel Path mode. Banshee, another average pick frame. Her strongest abilities are Sonar and Silence. Sonar is one of the best, if not the best, damage boosting abilities in the game. This skill alone can allow you to reach the 2 billion damage cap of the game, while her third ability is great when you equip it with the Savage Silence augment. The finisher damage does synergy well with her Sonar ability, and with minimal range, then you could use this with Skidjati and Arcane Trickery to go invisible most of the time in long endurance runs. Her fourth ability might be good for low-level missions, but I rarely use it. However, Sonic Boom is very handy if you equip it with Sonic Fracture. You only need 143% power strength to strip all enemy armor, and the frontal area is wide that it makes it very effective. However, the problem building a high-range Banshee is that it contradicts your Silence ability, which gives you a mere second of crowd control. In fact, the main problem with Banshee is survivability. Even with shield gating, she is still very susceptible to damage that most players use her as a supporting damage frames and don't even bother trying her solo. Baroque. Honestly, this frame is slowly creeping to the top of the food chain. Many believed that this frame is either a strong pick or an average pick, but with the recent addition of Steel Path, I think many would see the true power of this frame. Baroque has 3 strong abilities. His Lull is a global crowd control. His Desolate Hands is another form of crowd control which disarm enemies of their weapons, while giving the frame damage reduction at the same time. While his fourth ability is his ultimate killing skill when you equip it with the Reactive Storm augment. The damage this frame deal with its fourth augment equipped is insane. What's more amazing is that Baroque can crowd control and be a tank at the same time. Elude is also a good ability, but it does contradict when you are building with the pure power strength Baroque. It may be the best way to erode your restraint bar, but if you are constantly using your second and third abilities, you won't even need this ability at all. If you somehow want to witness how powerful this frame is, then try it on the Steel Path mode. Chroma, the ageless dragon who is after rework. Still only 2 abilities shine out for this frame. I know I'm not the only one who understands how underwhelming both Spectral Scream and Effigy right now, and still, both Elemental Ward and Vex are more rather strongest abilities of Chroma. These 2 abilities made Chroma famous as both a tank and damage boosting frame, and these 2 abilities are the reason why many people choose to play this frame on specific missions. You can take Chroma in any high level content because of his durability and as well as damage. Not only that, but you can also use him to take down the big bosses in the game like the Orb Mothers and Eidolons. I'm guessing that if we will see another big boss fight in the new infested world, many would take Chroma as their frame for this boss battle. Ember. After her massive rework, this frame has become more viable in high-level missions. Normally in the past, you'll see Ember shine in low-level missions wherein she just simply sit in the corner burning enemies with her world of fire. You rarely see someone using Ember in long-endurance runs, and if they do, you will just see them sitting in a corner again, spamming Fire Blast or using the Augment for his 4th ability. But, you won't see her doing the most damage in a team. This changes when her rework rolled out, and this is the main reason why players think that she is a strong pick right now. Her fire damage and crowd control prowess were aided with both damage reduction and damage mitigation. In fact, with the right build, you can reach a certain point that you don't need a weapon to kill enemies. All you need is to activate Immolation, spam Inferno until it reaches max meter, then strip armor with Fire Blast, and kill enemies with either Fireball or Inferno. Rinse and repeat. This frame's kit right now is versatile, which makes Ember good in multiple scenarios. Equinox. If this is your first time playing the game, then you may find it odd that most of the player base thinks that Equinox is strong, or even top tier level. Don't worry, as I have the same feeling before. However, once you know the kit of this frame, you'll understand how powerful she is. The highlight of this frame is her ability to nuke with her 4th ability. She becomes a beast with a team constantly killing enemies and building up that nuke bomb for her 4th ability. You can also do this in solo setup. All you need are weapons that can kill fast to build up the damage of your 4th ability. After that, you unleash hell once it reaches your desired damage build up. But there's more to explore on this frame than nuking. Equinox has one of the best band-aid mods for her abilities. Her Metamorphosis has the Duality Augment, which allows you to summon a clone that has increased damage buff. Rest and Rage has the Calm and Frenzy Augment that increases the duration and helps spread out the buff of this ability, which is better utilized in group composition. She also has the Peaceful Provocation Augment for her 4th ability that allows you to either slow enemies or give out power strength per damage dealt within the area. Lastly, she got Energy Transfer for her 4th, which basically allows you to keep the charges you won both Mend and Maim when switching to night or day form. Not only that, this frame can nuke, but her ability to support, and as well as allow players to create different synergies, makes her a very enticing warframe. Excalibur. Time has changed, but still, this frame is considered to be one of the strongest starter frame. The game plan for Excalibur is pretty simple. Give this frame his Chromatic Blade Augment, add efficiency then range, and sufficient power strength. Then you can be the hack and slash demon with the ability to blind targets within a large area. This what makes Excalibur strong. His damage output on his 4th ability is pretty neat, and he has good crowd control also. But, did you know that it's not his 4th that can deal tons of damage? It's his 2nd ability with the Radial Finish Augment that can deal massive damage to enemies per finisher kills. In fact, you can easily hit up to 1,000,000 damage with Radial Finish. His 1st ability may not be fancy and sometimes neglected by some, but it's actually a good mobility and invulnerability skill. In terms of who is the best, Excalibur or Excalibur Umbra, I'd say that it's basically on a player's personal preference. Some may like Umbra because he can cast Radial Blind without consuming energy when you decided to go operator mode, but others may stick with the regular or Prime Excalibur simply because they don't want to cast Exalted Blade again once they transfer back to their frame. Nonetheless, Umbra or the normal version, Excalibur will stay strong as long as he has his Radial Blind and Exalted Blade. But wait, never forget about Radial Javelin. For some, it may be just a fancy wall clipping ability, but the truth is, its Furious Javelin Augment does interact well with his Exalted Blade. Extra damage plus crowd control is something not to be ignored. Frost. This frame may either be a strong pick or an average pick for you, depending on how you play this warframe. Between Limbo and Frost, I find this frame to have a very slight advantage when it comes to defense mission. It's because Snow Globe can be spam and you can literally just build for armor, power strength, and lots of efficiency to defend a target. This is what makes Frost strong. He is a beast when it comes to defending a certain objective. However, Frost is not all about defending, but he can also hold his own provided that he also got good crowd control, especially if you add the impedance augment on his second ability. It gets better if you have a decent range since his fourth ability can also do the same, plus give you armor stripping if you have enough power strength in your build. Overall, Frost is quite strong because of his defense, and that is why players love to play him whether with a team or solo. Gara. You might be surprised why Gara is dubbed to be one of the top tier frame in this community tier list. As expected from my community, they have a clear understanding of how good Gara's ability interact with each other. Shattered Lash could be paired with Mass Vitrify for good damage. Splinter Storm is a great damage reduction ability, while Spectro Rage is basically a skill for aggro control. But that's not all. Gara became famous not just because of her ability to defend and survive, but she is better known for her insane damage output with her Splinter Storm ability. Do remember that this ability doesn't just give damage reduction to you and defense targets, but it's actually a good source of damage. Every time you shatter your Mass Vitrify with your Shattered Lash, while this ability is active, it will gain damage to the point wherein you can just walk around and kill everything with Splinter Storm. It may take a while to ramp up the damage, but it's not impossible since her kit is well built to crowd control and defend, giving you enough time to build up your Splinter Storm damage. Garuda, the Blood Queen, more like the Nuke Queen. I have an upcoming Garuda video which will showcase the immense power of this frame, but to give you a brief detail of how powerful this frame is, just imagine a crowd of high-level enemies being wiped out with a nasty beating bloody ball of death. This frame can be very tricky to use at first, but when you get to know all of her abilities, you'll find out how exemplary this frame is. The key is to cast each abilities at the perfect time. Dread Mirror should always be active to gain damage, mitigate frontal damage, and somehow give invulnerability if you decided to equip its augment, while both Bloodletting and Blood Altar synergize well with each other when you are healing and getting energy. And when the right time comes, cast your Seeking Talons, charge your first ability, and destroy them all. This frame is the definition of high risk high reward, and most players like this kind of gameplay. However, despite the fact of how fun Garuda's gameplay could be, still, we can't deny the fact that she only excels in specific missions like long survival runs, which is why many consider Garuda as just an average pick. Ghost. The main reason why you play Ghost is to harness what it truly means to be a speed demon. Mac Rush is probably the highlight for Ghost, but once you get to know the frame, you'll find out that he is well built for almost all scenarios. His kinetic plating is very good, as not only does it gives you invulnerability to certain damage types at max redline, but it actually gives you knockdown resistance, which is crucial for this speedy frame. His Thermal Sunder is also unique. Not only does it gives you amazing crowd control, but it can also armor strip if you decide to mix cold with heat. And then, Redline is the ability that completes this Warframes kit. Aside from the fact that you can hit 100% Redline, and gain the maximum benefit of all your other 3 abilities, it does give out decent buff to your frame. This frame is so good and well built that I even decided to make its Redline sound effect as my intro. Grendel. I will be straightforward with this one. I agree with everyone saying that Grendel is on the bottom tier in the past, but the Steel Path update made a difference. This frame made a resurgence during the addition of hard mode, and we get to see the new meta for Grendel players now, which is eat, spit, repeat until the enemy dies. Undeniably, this frame is made for missions that have lots of enemies spawns, but making him an average pick overall. But we also can't deny the fact that one ability alone can't entice the entire community from playing Grendel. Honestly, I still think that this frame needs a bit of rework. I'm not saying a complete overhaul and give this frame a new set of abilities. A simple buff and mechanic on his other abilities would suffice. Yes, augment may be the solution, as what they did with Catapult for his pulverize ability, but still, I would want something that not only fun, but actually worth having, so I can say that I will take Grendel instead of my meta frame in a mission. Harrow. This is another of those well-built frame in my opinion. This frame is a strong pick because he is very useful in most scenarios. Aside from supporting his teammates in normal star chart with infinite energy, crowd control, and lots of critical chance, he can also be great on idle hunts. He became stronger when the developer decides to add the shield gating mechanic in the game. He is one of those frames that can become immortal just by using his shields with the right build and mod setup. In fact, solo endurance runs while being able to move around is a thing now with Harrow. The shield gating mechanic was the nail in the coffin for Harrow being one of the strongest warframes in the game. Hildrin, the queen of shield gating, because of how high her shield values can get. This frame is tankier than Inarro's in specific situations. Against infested, well, good luck with that. The 3 seconds invulnerability when your shield depletes will give you enough time to replenish it again. It's an endless loop of getting shield and using the shield gating mechanic. Because of this strong mechanic, players tend to forget that Hildrin has some other interesting skills on her kit. Her Balefire can do huge damage if you mod it well. Her Haven ability can give overshield to allies, and they can also take advantage of the shield gating mechanic. Her Pillage does not only give you shields, but it also reduces the armor and shields of the enemies affected, while her 4th is good at crowd control and it can also give energy. While her abilities are good, it all boils down to purpose, which is why many consider Hildrin as an average or strong pick. Her abilities are mainly for crowd control and survivability. She got a bit of a supportive role, but the shield drain makes it inefficient, especially if you are in a full squad. Hydroid. I totally agree that Hydroid is one of those average pick frames. In fact, I only use him in long endurance runs by using a Puddle of Death build, and for farming resources with his hentai tentacles. There's not much to say about this frame than he is good in specific situations. In Arrows, the only thing I can say about this is that this frame is built to not die and use abilities. I was expecting that they would tweak Inarro's abilities before his prime version, but it looks like Digital Extremes think that this frame is already in good condition. Players play Inarro's for one reason, is because of his insane amount of health values. He is considered to be a top tier frame mainly because of this reason, although he got some decent abilities, like his Desiccation, which will open an enemy to finisher kills, and Scarab that can heal or give status immunity to Inarro's when you equip its augment, but still, this is overlooked by the health values of Inarro's. The guy can reach 9027 health alone, and can go beyond 10,000 if you are teamed with health buffing frames or have the Physique Aura mod. However, don't ever think that this frame is immortal with just high health values alone. You will die with Inarro's if you don't take care of your armor also. High health will be a dead weight in high level missions if you don't pair it with damage reduction. Ivara the Huntress, a very strong warframe because you can do a lot of synergies with her abilities. An augment quiver is good, will give you insane critical damage boost. Navigator is a fun and good option for idle and hunts. Prowl is one of the best survivability skills, and it actually makes you a goddess in long survival runs since you can also pick up energy orbs and life support from enemies. While Artemis Bow is fun to use in close range, and could somehow be a fun nuking ability if you augmented it with the concentrated arrow. The only thing that holding the community from making Ivara top tier is because she is very fragile, that even the slightest mistake you make in high level missions, or even in idle and hunts would always warrant to death. Nonetheless, Ivara is pretty useful in almost all scenarios: survival, exterminate, interception, spy, and any mission that you can think of. Cora. This frame is strong because of 2 reasons. One is because of her whip claw ability. The way this ability works is it does scale with power strength, the mods you equipped on your melee weapon, and with combo counter. The best part is, it can use acolyte mods such as Weeping Wounds and Blood Rush, which makes the ability deadly. One crack of her whip and it's all over, especially if you have her accumulating whip claw equipped. The other reason is that Cora is a good farming frame. Her Pilfering Strangledome augment turns her 4th ability into one of the best farming abilities. She may not have a strong survivability kit, but when it comes to crowd control and dealing damage, Cora is one hell of a beast. Limbo, an all-defensive warframe that stops everything once they are on his wonderland. This frame is strong in defense missions, but his ability to go into the rift makes him a handy frame for spy missions also. The rework wherein you can shoot projectiles now on the rift made Limbo very appealing to the community, and he is now a viable option in any defense type mission. Not to mention that you can deal decent damage to enemies inside the rift if you decided to use his rift torrent augment. Although time stopping is a pretty godlike feature, Limbo is still dubbed as a strong frame and not on the top by the community. The frame is still fragile outside the rift, and his cataclysm sometimes pisses off other players. The best advice I can give you is to know how much range you need for every defense mission type so you won't make other players furious. Loki. Compared to other invisibility frames, Loki is more defensive. He uses his invisibility to stay hidden while luring enemies with his decoy, or making them look dumb with his fourth ability equipped with the radial disarm augment. He is also a superior damage dealing frame, not because he has damage boost, but simply because he can take advantage of the stealth multiplier by equipping his hushed invisibility augment. Although Loki's abilities are simple and useful, still players prefer to use him in specific situations such as spy, survival, defense, or even interception. I respect that my community rated Loki as average pick, but honestly, I think he is on the strong tier because he can do multiple tasks in the game. That's just my personal opinion though. Mag. While I do love to put Mag on top tier, but I do agree that she is best in the strong and average hierarchy, simply because Mag's power does excel against higher level enemies, and most of the time, this frame shines on endless defense and survival missions. Just like Loki, Mag has very simple abilities. Her first pull targets, her second group them together and explode after it expires, her third can reduce shields and disarm enemies when you choose to have its augment, while her ultimate both give you shields and allow you to crowd control a wide area. This frame does have insane synergy with various projectile weapons, and she is a complete frame for endurance runs in my opinion when it comes to utility and damage output. On the other hand, survivability may seem to be a problem for some, but with the recent shield gating mechanic, it only takes one cast of Crush to get over shields. But still, like I've said earlier, Mag only shines best on specific missions. You can take her on every mission but don't expect her to perform better than other frames. Mesa. Without a doubt, one of the top tier frame in the game. This is basically the cheat code in Warframe, the aimbot where you just literally press her fourth ability and aim a target. In fact, Mesa is one of those frames that you can easily take out on the shelf and dive right away into a mission. Do you want to do exterminate? No problem. Survival, defense, interception, mobile defense, Mesa can literally do almost all missions in the game. What's more amazing about this frame is that Digital Extremes took the time to make her even more powerful by adding damage reduction with Shatter Shield, and crowd control with her shooting gallery. Mesa is a complete warframe that everyone must have in the game. Mirage. This frame's power revolves mainly within her two abilities, Hall of Mirrors and Eclipse. Hall of Mirrors will give you a reflection of Mirage that can somehow shoot additional projectiles and do more damage when you augmented the ability, while Eclipse is a unique ability that gives damage reduction to this frame when she is in dark areas, and boosts in damage when she is in light areas. The damage bonus on Eclipse is so good that many players consider Eclipse as a better damage buffing ability compared to Chroma's Fury buff, but the problem is, you need to meet certain conditions to have that insane damage buff. If somehow we can proc light and darkness at will, then Mirage will be a better frame. The rest of her kit is situational. Her sleight of hand is best used with the Legiman augment, and will somehow turn your Mirage into a new queen, pissing Sarin on the Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, and her Prism could both be a crowd control and damage source for low-level missions. Overall, this frame is considered by many as strong because of her damage boost plus some extra trick that she's hiding in her pocket. Necros, the king of the undead, but for others, the king of Warfarm. Although we have a couple of options when it comes to farming stuff in the game, Necros is the best since you can use him easily in higher level scenarios. In fact, his dominance becomes more prominent when the Steel Path update arrived. The beauty of this frame lies in his Desecrate ability wherein you have a chance to gain extra loot per enemies you dismembered with any slash weapons. The best part is, his fourth ability can be modded to somehow gain damage reduction when the ability is active, making it easier for you to farm high-level missions in the game. His second ability is also fun to use with the Creeping Terrify augment, as it somehow reduces armor and slows the movement of enemies. This is another frame that you must have in the game as it will make farming stuff a lot easier. However, Necros isn't considered to be at the top, since he can't be good in multiple missions. He excels mostly when there are lots of enemies when you are doing a high-level mission. Nizar. Honestly, I can say that Nizar is a bit of everything after his rework. His Firewalker gives you speed and crowd control. His Blazing Chakram will give enemies damage vulnerability and will also give you mobility. His Warding Halo is one of the best tanking skills at endurance runs in my opinion, because after all the armor depletes, you'll have a couple of seconds of invulnerability to cast the ability again, not to mention that it does also provides crowd control once the armor is gone, while his fourth ability is a massive crowd control that puts enemies into huge peaks. He may not have damage, but his kit will ensure survivability and utility to chip away the health of the enemies. He is considered a strong pick simply because his kit can let you do multiple missions in the game. By the way there's an angry mob in front of your doorstep waiting for answers of why you didn't release Nizar Prime. Just kidding. Nidus. Okay, although we all know that this frame only performs well in specific mission types, but still, most of the community thinks that Nidus should be on the top simply because he is very good at missions where he is supposed to excel. The versatility of frame criteria gets overridden by the fact of how well built this frame is. I think Nidus was the first frame that has been well thought and made that all of his abilities are synergetic with each other. Nidus is like a one-man army in long endurance runs. He can damage and replenish energy with virulence. He can group enemies with his lava. He can mitigate damage with his parasitic link. He can crowd control, boost damage of your virulence, and heal you at the same time with his ravenous. And the best part is, he is basically unkillable if you always have enough mutation stack to spend. Another good thing about this frame is the amount of weapon synergy you can create with this frame, and his augment are also crazy fun to use. Although Nidus is clearly not versatile, his abilities are godlike, which makes him one of the top frames in the game. Nova. The first ever community created frame that turns out to be one of the best frames in the game. Just like other god tier level frames, Nova has it all. She has damage reduction with her first ability, nuking power with his second ability, mobility and now, utility since you can shoot projectiles with her wormhole, and lastly, the best of them all, Molecular Prime, which is not only a global crowd control, but will also inflict bonus damage to the enemies. The best thing about Nova is that you can also take this frame in almost all missions in the game, probably a Warframe that everyone must also have. Nyx. Even mostly voted for this frame to be a bottom dweller, I still think that Nyx is good and should be an average pick. The rework for this frame may not be the things that everyone expected, but it somehow made Nyx a better frame. The addition of armor and shield stripping on her psychic bolts was very good, and still, her chaos ability is one of the best when it comes to doing high-level intersection solo. However, I completely get that most players don't like the fact that the only form of damage mitigation of this frame is through his fourth ability while using the Assimilate augment, and Assimilate Nyx is pretty easy to build, but with the optimal mod setup, this build variety is still slow in terms of movement, and does drain a lot of energy. I think people who consider this frame as trash are hoping for a better rework. If not, then they're just looking for a better ability that would interest them in playing Nyx. Like I've said, I think this Warframe deserves to be on the average pick since she is efficient in specific missions. Oberon, the jack of all trades. The frame that can somehow do it all: survive, do idle and hunts, crowd control, strip enemy armor, buff allies with radiation damage, and also increase the survivability of the team with his health regen feature. There's nothing much to say about this frame except that Oberon is good at everything. Octavia, another frame in which purpose is overridden by her abilities. You don't exactly consider Octavia as top tier because she can be great in all missions. She is one of the best simply because she got two insane features. One is the infinite damage scaling ability Mallet. This ability can kill even level 10,000 enemies by itself. In addition, Octavia has this thing called infinite invisibility. If you have a beat so good to keep up the nocturne buff of your metronome, then can be invisible and definitely, truly a Warframe in which destructive power is unmatched. Protaya. Now I haven't included this on my community tier list selection, but I would say that Protaya is an average pick frame. She does excel in some situations, but that's it. Based on my experience, this frame's abilities are good enough on their own. Grenade Fan can be both used for survivability and damage, but not to the extent that it can kill high-level enemies alone. His Blaze Artillery was made good with the recent tweak, and I did have tons of fun with this ability on Survival and Elite Sanctuary Onslaught. I did try it on Steel Path, and it's good, but do not expect it to kill enemies with 1 or 2 shots. Her dispensary is one of the most unique abilities in the game, and very handy for long endurance runs, while Temporal Anchor is a safety net mainly, which gives you that time to recover from dying situation. If we sum this all, we don't see anything beyond surviving and damage dealing with her abilities. That is why I only consider her as an average pick. Revenant. I do understand why my community's opinion was divided from strong and average pick. It's because Revenant does stand out its specific missions, and sometimes, if you try to min-max his build, you can actually get him to do multiple tasks. For example, if you will build Revenant with pure power strength, then you'll end up benefiting from his mesmer skin, and making the frame tanky, while adding a mix of duration, power strength, range and efficiency could make this frame versatile because he can take full advantage of his full kit. On the other hand, it's also possible to mod Revenant as the ultimate spin to win, and you could use him to some bosses in the Star Chart mission. Honestly, there are plenty of things that you can do with this frame outside being a tank. If you make Revenant versatile, then you will truly enjoy this frame. Be sure to check back soon, as I will be giving you an updated Revenant video. Rhino. This is definitely a strong pick frame. I know most of us are addicts about this frame's iron skin, and most of the fun we have is building up that ferrite armor to reach 1,000,000 values. However, a super tank Rhino is not the only build you can use for this frame. Rhino is also strong damage support because of his raw ability, and he also has one of the best crowd control in the form of his stomp ability. With these abilities in mind, it's obvious that Rhino can do multiple tasks in this game. Sarin. There's no denying the fact that Sarin is one of the top tier frames when it comes to damage. Her Spore ability will single-handedly obliterate a room within a couple of seconds. However, players often overlooked the fact that this frame also has other good abilities, like Toxic Clash that creates multiple weapon synergy, or Miasma that inflicts viral damage. Nonetheless, no one can take the title Nuke Queen from Sarin, and this is why she is one of the most desired frames in the game. Titania. This Warframe was a mixed opinion in the past. Although many love the dual-wielding flight simulator, Titania in the past was clunky and missing some parts that would create a better experience while playing this frame. The rework did a good job in introducing new and swift flight mechanics to this frame, while adding layers of needed tweaks to make this pixie fun to play. With that being said, Titania right now is in a good spot, and considered to be one of the strongest frame in the game. Her ability to melt enemy health with her dual pistols is second to none. Then, her other abilities support her ultimate by providing crowd control, damage mitigation, and as well as energy refund if you decided to equip the Spellbound Harvest Augment. Not only that, you can use this frame for killing enemies and bosses, but you can also use her crowd control in defense and even in interception missions. Although it's not that great compared to other defensive frames, but it's good enough to provide time for you to kill the enemies. Trinity, yet another strong tier frame which at first glance, you will definitely consider Trinity for support purposes. Her energy vampire and ability to replenish both health and shields with her blessing ability, plus give you damage reduction are purely the needed things of a squad when it comes to facing high-level enemies, or even doing boss fights like the Eidolons. However, talking about the awesome support abilities of Trinity is just like scratching the surface of this frame. This frame gets insane plenty of damage reduction from both her Link and Bless ability, and if you somehow managed to equip her with the abating Link Augment, then she becomes a healer and an armor stripper at the same time. Velka. The main strength of this frame is damage mitigation with her armor, increase in attack speed with Warcry, invisibility and red crit damage with her Hysteria. This frame is a killing machine, and mostly, you will be spending your time on assassination and survival runs with this frame. This is clearly an average pick frame because no matter how godlike the damage and survivability of this kitty frame, players only use it for specific purposes. Vauban. The engineer frame has made a comeback after its most recent update, although still, Vauban is missing a key component when it comes to survivability, but the massive rework has made him very good in terms of utility and crowd control. In fact, there are hidden features on his Tesla Nervos and Mine Layer abilities that are so fun to use. To give an example, Fletchet Orb does have a puncture scaling damage which makes it good against high-level enemies. Vauban has also added armor stripping, but in my honest opinion, it wasn't implemented well since it will take some time to strip enemy armors. While I wish that Digital Extremes would make a little improvement to Vauban, like faster casting or armor stripping, this frame is still very good at the moment. His strongest purpose is to crowd control enemies, and his Bastille, which can be turned to vortex, can suck everything to oblivion. Also, enemies within the vortex are very susceptible to damage, so expect everything to melt if they got sucked into the black hole of doom. Volt. This frame is on the strongest list mainly because of his electric shield and discharge ability. His ultimate, if modded well, will allow you to farm the elite Sanctuary Onslaught. Not to mention that it allows you to be a great defensive warframe also. Not only that you can defend, but you can also provide shields to your allies if you have the capacitance augment. On the other hand, Electric Shield at first glance may just provide frontal cover for Volt and allies, but the truth is, it's the best ability to have in taking down the shields of Eidolons with your operator's Void Beam. The critical damage boost does work with the amps, and it also works well with those critical monster primary and secondary weapons. He is one of those frames that are strong enough to take on different tasks in the game, and I highly recommend getting Volt as one of your first few frames. Wisp. While there's no overly complicated mechanic on Wisp's abilities, some may be stunned of the fact why players consider this frame as top tier. This frame may not have an overpowered ability like the rest of the top tier frames, but all of her abilities are well designed that it functions well in real missions. Her reservoir is one of kind. It gives you various useful buffs, plus it has no duration, meaning it will be active in the field for the rest of the mission, and it can't be damaged by enemies. The buff that it provides is pretty useful also. The health and health regen make it a good supporting ability. The same goes for its fire rate and speed buff. While the shock mote is very good in terms of crowd controlling a location, she also got her second ability, which not only lets you fast travel from point A to point B, but gives you a couple of seconds of invulnerability when you decided to mod it with lots of duration. And there's her Breach Surge, which administers a lot of damage multiplier to a crowd of enemies. Although in my opinion, Soulgate is not the best among all of her skills, but still, it's fun to harness the power of the sun and throw it to the enemies. Overall, Wisp may not have one strong ability, but what she has are unique abilities that are actually very useful for solo or team composition. Wukong. Even if some of us missed the old Defy Wukong, the rework was so good that many players already forgot about the old Monkey King. The rework made Wukong very versatile. His Celestial Twin is one of the most fun mechanics among his abilities, and you can create a lot of weapon synergy with this skill. Cloud Walker has become the greatest asset for Wukong in terms of spy mission, while Defy, even it's not the old Defy anymore, has turned into a great safety net and as well as damage and crowd control. Primal Fury stayed the same, and I can honestly say that it's not on its prime condition right now. This is one of the exalted melee that needs to be buff, or simply make Acolyte mods work on it. Nonetheless, the whole kit of Wukong after rework has made him a very desirable frame to play. Zephyr. This frame has one good ability in my opinion, and that is her Turbulence ability. With the Jetstream augment, you can turn your Zephyr into a semi-tank, and could turn a shotgun like the Arcaplasma into a sniper rifle, even though you can have some dumb fun with her fourth ability when you use it with the Funnel Clouds augment. Still, the synergy is barely usable in real missions. You will need to group enemies tightly, cast the clouds, and apply corrosive damage. While it's not impossible to recreate this synergy, but still, it requires a lot of work. I honestly think that Zephyr requires a complete overhaul, if not, a touch from those godly hands of Pablo. Fingers crossed. So finally we are at the end of this community tier list. I hope that you have not only learned who is considered by many as the top frames in the game, but also gain enough knowledge about the strengths and weaknesses of each frame. If you want to even learn how to play each of the Warframes presented in this video, then I advise you to check out my Warframe builds and synergies playlist, which I will link at the pinned comment. Lastly, check out the results of the official community tier list of our team. Thank you so much for watching. Squad Leader signing off.
This is the future. Human error. Evolution. This is the future. Evolution. This is the future. evolution. This is the future.